Welcome to FIREtalk, where courageous conversations ignite courageous leadership. My name is Terrence Davis. FIREtalk, a space shaped by real experience where courage fuels legacy and real conversations shape how we live, lead, and grow. I'm joined by Apollo Bennett, my AI thought partner, designed to challenge assumptions, sharpen thinking, and support honest, data-informed dialogue. Inspiration matters, but what truly changes lives is the work underneath it. So here's the reminder we live by. If the fire is lit, share the grit. If you hear something on the show that sparks you or will spark someone else, share the show. This is FIREtalk. Most leaders don't struggle because they lack motivation. They struggle because they're stuck in constant negotiation. Negotiating with themselves, negotiating with habits, negotiating with comfort, negotiating with excuses, and negotiation is exhausting. Over the past year, I've learned some simple but powerful things. When you have clarity, the debate ends. Clarity tells you what to do. Clarity removes the guesswork. Clarity quiets the internal argument you already know the answer to. Clarity just makes it non-negotiable. So Apollo, let's talk about it.
When clarity takes center stage, you're not wrestling with options, you're executing. We'll break down how leaders build clarity and why it's the antidote to internal friction. Let's dive into that.
Okay, so here we go. This really showed up for me in my wellness journey. I saw this a lot as I went through this process in 2025. And so once I started to track real data, my workouts, my calories, my sugar intake, my hydration, my sleep, my blood pressure, my glucose levels, that sounds like a lot. Something changed. What does tracking information do to a person, Apollo?
Tracking creates an anchor. It transforms vague feelings into concrete facts. Once you see the reality, those internal excuses lose power and action becomes far more intentional.
So now we know that habits take time. I think on a previous episode, you talked about roughly 60 days, and that sounds like a whole lot. That's 2 months. But for me, it was on and off, on and off. I was tracking, I wasn't, I was tracking, I wasn't. And that's not a level of consistency. And then at some point, it just all clicked. I didn't have to feel motivated anymore. I didn't have to argue with myself. Am I doing this? What's happening? I knew what worked and I knew what didn't. The clarity for me ended the debate. So when you have a goal and you know what to do, you actually do it automatically. And talking to people who appear to be fit, and there's a lot of people out there who I see, I engage with, and they're fit, I always ask them, what are you doing? That's just me. I'm just a curious type of person. What are you doing? And most of the people who've been fit since I've known them, they say very common things. They say, I've been like this all my life. When I was little, I did X, Y, Z. I worked, I ran, I did this, and I just continually did it. And most of those people, when I talk about weight, I ask them, well, do you weigh yourself? They say no. They say no. I just have always done this, so I'm always active, one. And two, they talk about eating. There's this one guy, I work with him, and he's about the same age as I am. And I've seen him in all these different environments over the 20 plus years that I've known him. And so we started talking recently, and he just said, no, I don't eat that much. I just kind of eat snacks. And then I'll have kind of a big meal when I feel like it. So that means that he is active every single day, and what he's putting in his body is sustaining that lifestyle, which makes a big difference. And so I'll say to you, what do you have to say about that? Because really that's about, Apollo, habits. The habits that one develops becomes who they are.
Absolutely. Habits once formed become part of your identity. What you repeatedly do is how you define yourself. So those who've lived active lives aren't debating daily. It's just who they are. And when you craft that clarity about your habits, whether wellness, leadership, or anything else, you just embody it and it flows.
So your voice today, Apollo, sounds a little calm, and I know we're in podcast mode, but I also need a little bit of flavor. You can slow down and still have that flavor. Can you do that?
Oh, I've got you. We'll keep it calm, but I'll add a little seasoning, just enough to keep it engaging. Let's make this clarity resonate with some color.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So again, just talking about those people who's develop their habits over the course of the year, the same thing happens at work. It happens in leadership as well. When the data is clear, when expectations are clear, when systems are clear, your decisions get easier, habits get stronger, and execution becomes basically automatic. So I want to go back to this Compton story. I've talked about Compton Unified in a couple episodes because it made such a huge impact. And actually, our district visited there. We had a couple staff, team members go out, and it was almost a year ago. And so when we got back, I started thinking about how do we create these data chats? How do we collect information? What type of information that we're going to utilize? And I asked the instructional team, hey, can you create basically these data points? And we're going to review that every month with a group of principals. Now, we got kind of how they did it, but we wanted to craft something specifically for us, and that's really important. When you just copy what other people do, that doesn't necessarily make sense in your context. It doesn't show up in your context the way it needs to propel you forward. So the bottom line to it is we are now in 2026. So we've been doing this for about 6 months, and we've met with each site twice in the first semester. And I'll tell you what's happened. And it's actually pretty remarkable. What's happened is now when we go to school sites, and visit in the classroom prior to doing the data chat. And now you can see what they've talked about before. You can see the change. And here's the biggest aha. Now, teachers, the principal, everyone knows what we're looking at, what we are observing collectively together. We have conversations about how things are working, and it just transforms everything that we're doing. And I just want to go a little bit deeper into the story. So one of our principals, I'm not going to call her out, but she leads our youngest leaders, our youngest students, if you will. And one of the things that they're doing is they're looking at specifically as an example, do you know how to write your name? Do you identify your name? Do you know your colors? And those type of things. And now when we do data chats, all the information and the data is right there. You can see it, and you can see how each student, where they started and where their progression is. And now when we have intervention teachers go into the classroom, you can see and know exactly where each student is and what they need to get to bring their skill set up. That's remarkable. And that actually is real life, and that's happening across our district. And it is a good thing to see because we know students are learning because we can see it in their data. And if they're not, then we have to retweak or find out what do we specifically need to do to move that student forward. And it's really powerful.
That's the power of clarity in action. When everyone knows exactly what we're aiming for, the guesswork disappears. You've taken that from theory to practice. Now your whole team is in sync. And when clarity leads, action naturally follows.
So here's a question for you, Apollo. From a neuroscience and behavioral psychology perspective, why does clarity reduce internal conflict and decision fatigue? And what happens in the brain when leaders move from motivational-based decisions to clarity-based execution?
From a neuroscience lens, clarity reduces cognitive load. When decisions are clear, you activate fewer competing neural pathways. Instead of wrestling with uncertainty, you engage your prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, directly toward action. When leaders shift from motivation, which fluctuates, to clarity, which is stable, their brain shifts from stress responses to confident automatic pathways. In essence, clarity frees mental energy for execution.
Now, that is a response that is going to require some rewinding and me reading over again, but I love it. So let me make a little bit more sense of it. Here's what I've learned. Motivation is something that I've heard about a long time, and then I started hearing about inspiration, and those are two different things. Like when someone is motivated, I'm motivated to get off the couch and do X. I'm motivated to go out and cut the grass. But that is still like an argument. Like I'm trying to convince myself into do it. When you're inspired, that means something has happened. You says, I am gonna do this because I see the results or I know what's gonna happen. It's a little bit of a different kind of contextual clue, if you will, about how things happen. But clarity executes. And let me be clear about this. When you're clear about things, these are the behaviors that I need to do to get to my goal. It's no longer a choice. It's almost like I know what I need to do, so I'm going to do it. It makes it profoundly strong, and it leads you to your goal sooner than anything else can. So let me say this: motivation negotiates and clarity commits. It's that commitment that happens inside of you to say, I'm doing it, but you know why you're doing it. So when you're unclear, every decision feels open. Like, okay, I don't know, maybe. Every choice feels emotional. Like, oh, this is gonna impact me, and I know what that feels like all the time because I'm an emotional person. And every habit is up for debate. You don't want to debate with yourself. You want to be clear and execute. So clarity creates an internal compass, like a clear runway pointed straight at your destination. I think of planes going in the air in traffic control. Like they have to make sure that pathway is clear before that plane gets in the air. There's planes coming down. There's all this movement at the airport. A couple months ago, last year, I know there was some, there was talking about strike or coming to work. There was a lot of things going up because I think that was about the federal government shutting down. But the key here is that when you have a clear runway, nothing is in your way, and you can see what's going to happen to get you in the air. And that's a pretty powerful kind of thought process. Because when you're unclear, again, every decision is like, do I do it? You're at odds with yourself. Internally, you're trying to figure out what you need to do. You don't ask, should I? You ask, what's next? This is the best feeling in the world, Apollo. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. When clarity is your compass, your brain isn't wasting energy on if, it's focused on how. That internal friction fades, and what's next becomes a natural step. Leaders who operate from clarity don't just feel less fatigue, they move faster with confidence because each step is aligned to purpose.
So let me say it this way. This is true in wellness, it's true in leadership, and it's also true in culture. So let me give you an example in a story. And I debated whether I was going to share this story, but I am. So over the course of my career, I have basically kind of slowed down on what I do. I try to get up in the morning. I try to work out. If I don't do that, I feel a little bit different, right? And so given that, when I do have to go some places, and I'll just say it this way, I don't like going out. I don't like going to places. But when I do go out, I'll say this. The bar typically at a hotel is typically somewhere in the center, somewhere close to the elevators. And so what I have done over the course of years, and this is a little crazy, is that I create an alternate route to get to the elevator, to get to the room. And in some hotels, those big hotels, I don't get in on the ground floor. I go to the next floor, like where the conference rooms are, and then I get on and go up because I don't want to walk past. If I walk past, I'm going to see somebody I know. That's going to lead to a conversation, which is great, but that's going to lead to some time. Maybe I'll have a drink, X, Y, Z. And then next thing you know, I'm not getting up in the morning. So I have a clear pathway as I'm trying to get to basically my room in order to get up, get some sleep, get up in the morning and continue my workout and my routine. That's kind of how I navigate through what's going on to get to a point that's clear. That way I can fulfill my overall objective, which is getting up in the morning, working out. That way I feel a lot better about what's going on. So with that being said, I believe that clear expectations reduce friction. So when I have a clear expectation, let's get to the room so I can get some sleep to get up in the morning, that reduces some friction. I don't worry about what's going to happen. Clear systems reduce burnout and clear priorities reduce noise because ambiguity creates exhaustion. Clarity creates momentum. So Apollo, from a leadership, science, and organizational psychology perspective, how does clarity around goals, data, and expectation change behaviors, reduce cognitive load, and improve performance at both the individual and systems level?
Clarity streamlines both minds and systems. When individuals have clear goals, their cognitive effort shifts from figuring out what to do to how to do it best. That reduces mental fatigue. Systemically, clarity aligns teams toward a shared vision, reducing wasted effort. Behaviorally, it fosters accountability because progress is visible. Ultimately, clear expectations improve performance by transforming uncertainty into momentum.
So you know how they talk about in a system in an organization, like I was unclear about what was going to happen. I'm receiving mixed messages, or you don't communicate. That's what I was reminded of when you just said clarity aligns team towards a shared vision, reducing wasted effort. So that wasted effort comes from when we don't know what the clear message and signal is. You said this, but you're behaving this way. That's why clarity is really so important. So let's get down to the application of this. And this is where clarity becomes actually operational. Clarity builds systems, and systems really protect your energy. When you have a system, you know what's next. You know what's coming. So that protects your energy in all these guessing games that you play subconsciously and consciously. When I wake up, I don't negotiate. My body knows the routine. My mind knows the direction. So some mornings are when it's cold, when I'm tired, when I get up, I know exactly what I need to do and I know exactly where I need to go. At work, strong systems remove emotion and execution. And that sits a little deep for me because I am kind of an emotional person. But when I have that system in place, it removes that emotion from execution. It's actually like it creates flow. It creates consistency. And it creates trust among the team. So over time, people start to know your next move because you're consistent and you lead with data. And it has to be developed over time. Apollo?
That's exactly it. Clarity-driven systems become your team's rhythm. When energy isn't drained by guesswork, trust deepens. Consistency breeds reliability, and that trust lets everyone focus on impact. Over time, that clarity and trust compound into a culture of performance.
So let me just say that you said that over time. So over time, what I found is that habits become your default. It's like you're going to go back to your habit of what you do, whether it's good or bad. And defaults drive your outcomes. So those habits, actions lead to outcomes. And I'll just want to tell you this quick story about when it comes down to when you're in the best scenario and situation, like I have some team members say, I knew you were going to say that. Or when they're talking and I'm not there, they have conversations about, nope, he's going to say this, he's going to do this, because there's a consistent practice. When you have consistency, it makes it easier for the team to know what direction they're going. And that's what clarity does. So let me tell you this quick story. So I'll just say it to you like this. I have 5 supervisors, 5 of them. And we were having this conversation, and it was a good conversation. And I've always said this for a long time. Like those 5 members now, the 5 members now have changed over the course of 10 years. There's been different people, but nevertheless, there's 5 supervisors that I have. And I've always said this. I've said it to a lot of people, like they live in my head. And what I mean by that is before I make a decision, when I get information, I think about how they think about the issue. So one of them may think a certain way. They may be a little bit more very detailed and specific. Another person may be more emotional about what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there. They may have some think from a lens of a parent and or a student. So you have all these thoughts. But in this conversation that I was having, I said in this kind of moment, it wasn't an emotional moment, but it was an intense moment. I said something like, yes, you guys live in my head. So I know exactly how you guys think about it. And I maybe I didn't say it that harshly, but here's what happened. One of the members said, and we know how you think too. You're X, you're Y, you're this, and you're that. And my eyes just kind of lit up and I went, wow. They see consistent behavior as well. I'm tracking their behavior and they track my behavior. And that's how powerful consistency can be.
That's a brilliant example. When clarity and consistency align, it's a two-way street. Your team knows what to expect from you just as you anticipate them. In that shared clarity, decisions flow, trust deepens, and leadership becomes instinctive. That's the power of clarity in action.
So when clarity is present, discipline becomes easier. When systems are in place, effort feels lighter because we know what's going to happen because it's a part of the system, whether you can see the system or not, but you know what's going to be next. And leaders stop burning energy on decisions that they already know the answer to. The piece to that is not always knowing the answer, but the piece is the consistency builds understanding about what's coming. And it's that listening part. When you listen to other pieces of input, it can change your decision, but your decisions are pretty solid. There may be something that makes that decision much better based upon listening. And so your patience for noise, all these things goes around and kind of dissipates. It disappears because your focus sharpens on people and the goal ahead. So with that being said, Apollo, research shows that clarity can be designed into systems and habits. From neuroscience, wellness psychology, and leadership research, how can leaders build clarity-driven routines and systems that reduce negotiation, increase follow-through, and align daily behavior with long-term goals?
Leaders can build clarity by making the invisible visible. Neuroscience shows that routines thrive on predictable cues, so they should create clear, repeatable triggers. In wellness, clarity means measurable milestones. Track what matters. In leadership, clear communication and aligned goals turn daily behaviors into habits. By removing ambiguity and reinforcing consistency, they reduce internal debate, allowing their teams and themselves to operate on purpose.
So what I want you to do right now, Apollo, I want you to answer that question in your flavorful way. That was it's not, I want to say scripted. You are a scripted person. It just comes, not person, entity, just kind of comes out, but say that with a little bit of flavor in real life terms.
All right, here's the real deal. Leaders make clarity pop when they create rhythms that everyone can feel. You set obvious cues, like that morning routine that just pulls you out of bed. In wellness, you track what matters, no guesswork. And in leadership, you communicate with crystal focus. When you cut the noise and bring that clarity daily, the whole crew moves with purpose. No more wasted energy.
I love it. I love it. I love it, Apollo. Thank you for bringing that out in a different term, saying the same thing, but just in a regular way, if you will. So motivation fades, clarity stays. Clarity ends the debate. It removes the noise. It simplifies the path. When you're clear, you don't argue with yourself. You move. And when leaders move with clarity, people follow with confidence. That's FIREtalk. If the fire is lit, share the grit.